Lacerate is a melee skill that swings your weapon twice, releasing waves of force to slice through your enemies. You get it at level 12 as a duelist, or any other class besides the witch really, which is why it was just my luck when I spun a couple wheels to decide what absurd build I'd be playing, and I got stuck with Lacerate Elementalist. So yeah, it's happening. I'm gonna attempt to beat Path of Exile on a melee witch. I create my character, give her the best name I could think of, and the two-handed thoughts journey slicing through Rayclast begins. Now, beating Path of Exile is obviously subjective. Does one ever really beat Path of Exile? Probably not, but for the sake of this challenge, I'm gonna define beating the game as follows. I have to reach the endgame and beat the trio of bosses known as the incarnations of Fear, Neglect, and Dread, as well as getting all 4 Void Stones by defeating the 4 major pinnacle bosses, the Eater of Worlds, the Syrian Exarch, Maven, and Uber Elder. No carries allowed. With Hillock burnt to a crisp, I enter Lionized Watch, and here already I have a decision to make. What skill am I going to use until I can actually get Lacerate at level 12? After some lengthy consideration, I opt for Freezing Pulse, since it's basically Lacerate but blue. In the very next area of the game, Fire Fury chases me like my psycho ex-girlfriend, so I run up to Aelith. Hey lady, think you can give me a hand?
Absolutely. Here you are.
Wait, no, that's not what I meant. Ugh. In the Mud Flats, I run into my first breach, the latest addition to the game. Right off the bat, hordes of monsters swarm me, and I do everything I can to try and keep Aelith alive, which proves to be impossible. So, no loot. Damn. Thankfully, from the next one, I get this pair of boots with 10% move speed, 17 life, some dex, and even some lightning res. These are a great find so early on in the run. I enter a purple portal, which brings me to the Monastery of Keepers, a new area where we get to do lots of breach crafting on this creepy looking Genesis tree. I mean, seriously, it's just a bunch of hands stuck together. Ugh. This is actually a new crafting mechanic that lets you customize what kind of items you want it to generate. The tree has a tree, of course it does, and as we progress through the game and pick up severed hands, feet, and other body parts I didn't know existed, like this hand mouph, yuck, we'll be able to put more and more points into the tree, letting us customize its output even further. For now though, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, so we'll worry about this stuff later. I uneventfully clear through Act 1 and enter the Cavern of Wrath, where I run into problem number 1 for this challenge. This is the point where any other class would gain access to Lacerate, either from a quest reward or by purchasing it from Nessa directly. But I'm stuck here playing a witch, and she does not have either of those options available to her. Now, some of you savvy viewers are going to be quick to realize that I have 2 different ways to go about getting my hands on a fresh level 1 Lacerate gem. Option A, I could keep progressing until I reach the library in Act 3, wherein I could complete a side quest for Ciosa, which would allow me to buy any gems I could want. This would take another hour or 2 and wouldn't really allow me to experience Lacerate on a witch from the get-go, but it is an option. Or there's option B, I could make a new character, any class besides the witch, and reach this exact point again in Act 1, which would let me buy it from Nessa directly. This would take me roughly 40 minutes, give or take, but it absolutely could be done, and I'd then be able to experience Lacerate as early as possible. Obviously, I went for option C. Ask strangers on the internet to buy it for me. NANI? First, I try asking in the local chat here in town with limited success. I did eventually get a response after a couple minutes of RPing, but I don't know, I got the feeling that this guy had ulterior motives. I turned to a different strategy, whispering specific people. Now, I know this is kinda weird, but desperate times call for desperate measures. So I found this level 11 duelist who goes by Giga, who almost certainly has made it to the Caverns of Wrath, and asked him for some help. No response. Damn. I try another guy, same thing. So next I tried something that I was really hoping I could avoid. I turned on global chat. And this was a huge mistake. I would love to show you what these socially challenged individuals were talking about, but I'm pretty sure that would get me instantly banned from YouTube forever. So I went back to whispering people in town, and eventually... Oh my god, it's happening. Yes. Huge shout out to Barg. Without your help, sir, I'd still be stuck in Act 1. With the first real challenge of the build conquered, there's one more thing I need before I can start slicing and dicing. I need a sword. So I turn to my buddy Bestel over here and start gambling, landing on this perfectly fine two-hander with 17 to 38 fizz damage. With it equipped, the two-handed thought is ready to take on the world. I head back into the caves and try Lacerate out. It's not amazing, but it works. We reach Merveil's private chambers and the first act boss fight of the run begins. It was so easy, and I can't even let Lacerate take credit for that. This was all thanks to a flesh graft ability I had just unlocked through the breach tree thing called Dance in White, which spawns a big ass tornado that chases enemies down. This was my first time using it, so I was pleasantly surprised to see it deal so much damage. I pushed through Act 2, making liberal use of my tornado for bosses and bandits. I kill them all for the extra skill point, by the way, and grab both Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder for some extra damage on Lacerate, and because no elemental build of mine is complete without at least one of them. Now, enemies blow up whenever I shatter them, which is oh so satisfying. I come across a Val Spectral Throw skill from a Val side area, and damn, this seems to be busted when combined with the Tornado for single target. Whoa. Next, I craft a new sword with an Essence of Hatred, and holy crap, it really hit. Here you can see what my passive tree looks like for the first time here at level 23. The witch starts out at the top, and I'm heading for the right side of the tree since down here is where the sword nodes are. Speaking of trees, I go back to the Genesis tree and give birth to some currency via this lavish womb gift I picked up. And from it we get our first Chaos Orb. Excellent. And not even 5 minutes later, with these couple of Chaos Orbs in our possession, I use them for their intended purposes. Shopping. First, I buy an Ignamon, which gives us fire damage, accuracy, and blinds nearby enemies, meaning we'll get hit less often. And then I go for one of my favorite early game rings, Tassalio's Sign. This ring gives us some flat cold damage at all times, yes, but even better, it gives us a whopping 40 to 60 added cold damage when hitting chilled enemies, which, like, with our Herald of Ice, we're going to be doing all the time. This is a massive damage boost for this early into the game. The second act boss, Val Oversoul, barely puts up a fight as the Tornado and Val Spectral Throw combo takes him out practically effortlessly. I go visit the monastery again, giving birth to some new flesh grafts, hoping to get another Tornado one, but higher level this time, and end up with a totally different lightning one instead. I have no idea if these grafts are created equally, but the least I can do is try them out as I get them. I kill the Shipyard Terror here in the docks. Anybody else remember running away from this guy back in the early dock farming days? No? Just me? Anyways, he drops an Essence, which I use on a new sword, and it ends up getting a bunch of Ellie damage. Not bad. While this weapon upgrade on its own is very welcome, it's made even better by the fact that I get to put my latest passive point into this Elemental Mastery over here, which reads, hits have a 15% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance values as inverted. This is huge. With our current setup, this does in fact translate to roughly 15% more damage on its own. Big. In the Lunaris Temple, we find our very first unique of the run, a Thief's Torment. This is probably my other favorite leveling ring because it grants a lot of resistance and solves both life and mana sustain at the cost of taking up both ring slots. That being said, I won't be using it on this build since the Tassalio's Sign is still doing some heavy lifting right now. I take care of Piety and then buy a Prismatic Tincture for 1 Alch. Tinctures are kind of like flasks, but they're also pretty different, and this is like the first time I'm really making good use of one. The Prismatic Tincture gives us a huge elemental damage boost while it's active, and now that we are leaning into elemental damage properly, the boost this provides cannot be understated. It's along the lines of 30 to 40% more damage when it's up. However, it's not all rays of sunshine, as tinctures differ from flasks in that they consume more and more of your mana the longer they've been active for, until eventually your mana regen just can't keep up and they go on a hefty cooldown. So while the damage boost is considerable, it's also short-lived and comes with the trade-off of me running out of mana constantly when I use it. For now, the only solution I have is to spam my mana flask whenever I'm running low, so yay, extra buttons to press. Putting this new problem aside, I go ahead and wrap up Act 3. Dominus goes down without a hitch, and we start making our way through Act 4. We grab the Charisma node on the tree, reducing how much mana our Heralds reserve, helping us ever so slightly with our mana problem, but not for long because I am planning on making things worse by squeezing in another aura. But before we do that, let's get ascended. So we make our way through the deadly traps in the lab and reach the final fight with Izaro, no problems. Without my tornado to help me, the fight takes a bit longer than some previous bosses, but he does eventually go down, allowing me to ascend into the Elementalist. For this first set of 2 points, I opt to go for the Shaper of Storms node, making it it so my hits always shock, and that all my damage, not just my lightning damage, contributes to the final shock value, which in case you don't know, the more shock an enemy has on them, the more damage they take. Simple. Alright, with the first labyrinth behind us, we can finally wrap things up in Act 4, but first, how about we take a nap? You've min-maxed your build in-game, but what about your sleep build? After a night frying your brain farming countless maps, you need comfort and total darkness, and that's what Manta Sleep delivers. These are premium quality sleep masks that completely eliminate light, 100% block guaranteed. They've got a wide range of different models, but this one right here, this one's the cream of the crop, the new generation sound mask. It's light, comfortable, non-intrusive, and most importantly, has built-in Bluetooth speakers. These speakers are super thin, so I literally don't even notice them while drifting off to my favorite Exile-themed ASMR.
You were born for this.
Manta Sleep is running a 15% off site-wide sale right now for Black Friday until the 27th of November, so act fast and stop letting sunlight crangle your sleep schedule. Click the link in the description for more information. Thank you, Manta Sleep. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so remember how I said we were going to be making use of that mana reservation efficiency we got not too long ago? Here's how. Elemental Weakness plus Blasphemy. Ele Weakness is a curse that reduces enemies' resistances, and normally it just casts the curse in a circle wherever you point it at. But when you support it with Blasphemy, now everything in a big circle around you is automatically cursed without you even having to lift a finger. It does reserve a bunch of mana though, which is why that Charisma node is coming in clutch. I rip through Dureso, absolutely obliterating him with our new guaranteed 32% shock, and then it's my turn to be shocked when this happens. Aw man, our first death of what will hopefully not be too many on this journey. I kill Comb next, and then head back to the library to grab Leap Slam and faster attacks for mobility, which I forgot to do earlier. I get another Chaos Orb, make a 4-link helm by throwing an Orb of Binding on it, and this is my 4-link setup. Lacerate paired with Multi-Strike, faster attacks, and added Lightning. And actually, now that I think about it, Lacerate isn't really cutting it, no pun intended. What I really want to use is an alternate version of Lacerate called Lacerate of Butchering. Yeah, it's pretty metal. So what's the difference? Well, normal Lacerate is pretty good if you're running a Fizz build because it also has an innate chance to bleed enemies, which so far we have been completely ignoring. Lacerate of Butchering, on the other hand, has way more damage effectiveness with the added downsides that it has no bleed, attacks a little bit slower, and costs more mana. Which sounds like a lot, but for our purposes, it's great. In any case, this is a massive upgrade that I pick up for 1 Chaos. With our newfound power increase, we take down Malachi with ease. Right after putting a stop to Malachi's evil plans, my unending hunger for power becomes insatiable as I make another purchase. A new sword for 1 Chaos, which increases our DPS by a whopping 30%. Sweet. At this point, I'm starting to feel pretty damn confident in the build. We've only died the one time, and our damage is feeling pretty good. So I figure the two-handed thought is due for some new threads. And that's so bad, it's good. I keep leveling, grabbing the 5% of Leech's instant mastery over here to help with our life and mana sustain, and then kill Innocence. Back in town, I had a short gambling session and ended up with these Wake of Destruction unique boots with a ton of flat lightning damage on them, further boosting our damage output as if that's the only thing that matters to us. It is. Next, I run through the cathedral rooftops and face off with the boss of Act 5, Kitava, who unfortunately one-shots me. Whoops, maybe I shouldn't just stand still and face tank him. I revive and finish him off. For Act 6, I caught up with my buddy Bell, who also spun a wheel to decide what build he'd get, and he landed on Split Arrow Hierophant, so he's doing ballistas. How many arrows does he fire? Yes. So we go do Tukohama together, except there's a small problem. Bell is nowhere to be seen. Well, crap. I guess I'm taking on 2-player HP Tukohama by myself then. Okay, I took care of Tukohama on my own. We push on through the rest of the act and face off with the King of Brine. I wonder what he tastes like. I'm not res capped yet, so yeah. With the Brine King taken care of, Bell and I part ways, but not before he hands me a Val Haste gem as a token of our long-lasting friendship. No, really, we've been friends for like 24 years now, and he still owes me for all of the papers I wrote that got him through college. I give the Genesis tree another visit and end up with this 5-link body armor, which I instantly swap to, adding in Inspiration. Inspiration gives your attacks some increased elemental damage as well as crit, and as if that wasn't enough, it also lowers the mana cost of the skill, which, yeah, as mentioned earlier, mana is an ongoing problem, and I think Inspiration is part of the solution. Over in the Crossroads, I get another unique drop, Gold Rim. While it is only a level 1 unique, and we all know that means it can't possibly be good, it's also extremely useful because it gives a bunch of all-res, and again, I'm not even res capped. So on my head it goes. I take a look at my passive tree once more, and as you can see, I've extended all the way down here for these sword nodes. And I've also taken some accuracy along the way, since all the damage increases in the world won't matter much if my attacks keep missing. I'm not really sure where to go next, but I am still feeling pretty squishy, so more life is probably the right play. I noticed this somewhat decent Viridian Jewel in my inventory, so I decided to hit it with a Valorb in hopes of it gaining a useful corruption. Something like Corrupted Blood immunity would be great. For those not in the know, using Valorbs on jewels will unpredictably modify the jewel by either giving it an extra implicit, scrambling the item's mods entirely, or transforming it into a unique instead. Oh, it could also do nothing. In this case, it transforms into Seething Fury, a unique jewel that is actually desirable for shield-based attack builds, worth a whole 15 Chaos Orbs. So I put it up for sale in hopes that someone will want to buy it. Now, you probably don't know this, but I am a huge fan of playing melee attack builds in this game. I play one nearly every league, and I tell you this because based on my experience, this build is seriously lacking in the attack speed department. So, in an attempt at bringing it closer to where I'd like it to be, I add in the Blood Rage gem. Blood Rage is a skill that grants you a buff that increases your attack speed, gives you Fizz damage leech, which is irrelevant to us, and has a chance to grant you a Frenzy Charge on kill. It also sucks the life out of you, making you take 4% of your max life as Fizz damage per second. This is somewhat problematic since I don't have much regen and I'm at the mercy of my leech to keep me alive. But the attack speed and Frenzy Charges Blood Rage provides is a worthwhile trade-off. Arakali is next, and oh yeah, that's more like it. With Act 7 complete, I figure I'm due for the second lab. So in I go, I fight Izaro's first phase, tanking what looks like a Lacerate of his own, and continue through the maze until I find him again. And this time, the goddess wrecks me. Damn, for those of you that don't know, the lab is one of only a few areas in the game where if you die, you have to start all over again. So yeah, I go through the whole lab again and manage to carefully bring Izaro down. I get 2 more Ascendancy points for my troubles, and I don't know guys, I'm feeling pretty dang squishy. I should probably grab Bastion of Elements for the big elemental shield it would give me, but I instantly picked Shaper of Flames because Path of Building said it would give me like 40% more damage. Big number make big PP after all. On the upside, while I did grab Shaper of Flames for the 100% chance to ignite, it also has a defensive component to it, making 40% of incoming Fizz damage get converted to fire damage, meaning my fire resistance actually lowers my Fizz damage taken. So actually, it all works out in the end. However, and this is editor Schwingy talking now, it turns out this node was bugged, and for the entire rest of the playthrough, I'll be taking more damage than I was supposed to, which will explain a lot. Yikes. I gamble a new pair of boots with 25% move speed and do a tiny tree respec to get rid of some of that Fizz damage now that the build is really much more focused on elemental. While I was putzing around with my skill gems, guess what? The Seething Fury sold for 15 Chaos. Hell yeah. That's gonna let us pick up some great starter gear for the endgame once we get there. For now though, I'll just use this new sword that I legitimately bought for 1 Chaos and totally didn't just grab from our guild stash. Okay, well honestly, Belle got it from the Genesis tree and wanted me to use it, but I could have bought one just like it for 1C. By the way, if anybody wants to join our guild, consider this an open invitation. Anyone is welcome, just let me know. I make my way through the Lunaris Temple in Act 8 when this happens. I could really use a silver flask right now. I do not need 2 quicksilver flasks anymore. No way. Ask and you shall receive. Silver flasks are great for us because they give us Onslaught, a buff that just makes you attack, cast, and move 20% faster. Exactly what we're looking for. At this point, Val's Spectral Throw is no longer pulling its weight, so I very uncharacteristically throw it on the ground, littering the streets of Sarn. Someone else will come clean it up, right? Back at our favorite tree, I give birth to a lavish womb gift, and out comes a full stack of Scouring Orbs. Yo, that's awesome. I can sell those and get something like 14 Chaos for them. By the way, one of my most common comments I see on my videos is you guys asking what this price checking tool is called. So here it is. In Path of Exile 1, it's called Awakened PoE Trade, and in PoE2, it's called Exiled Exchange. Now you know. I wrap up the rest of Act 8, taking out Solaris and Lunaris in 20 seconds flat, and then quickly make my way through Act 9 with nothing noteworthy happening. In Act 10, the last act, the first thing I do is get my third set of Ascendancy points, and this time I grab Bastion of Elements, the node that gives me a big old elemental shield, as well as makes me immune to Elemental Reflect. A very nice convenience. I cruise through Act 10 and face off with Gatava, who once again manages to whoop my ass when I run out of flasks and have no leech going. I finish him off though, and with that, the Two-Handed Thoughts campaign run is now behind us. We can finally get to the best part, the endgame. Alright, so I'm going to try and summarize how the endgame works in PoE as quickly as I can. These are maps. They come in 16 tiers, well 17, or actually I guess it's really 18 now that we have tier 16.5 to think about, but basically you throw these in your map device and it opens up 6 portals to a new area full of monsters. Each map has a boss and your goal is to kill that boss to get map completion on the atlas. We want to make our way all the way up to the top of this atlas because this is where we can start making tangible progress towards defeating these 7 bosses we set out to beat from the get-go. In case you need a reminder, we want to beat the trio of incarnations as well as these 4 Voidstoners. When you complete a map on the Atlas for the first time, you also gain a point that you can put in your Atlas passive tree, letting you customize what kind of content you'll find in your maps. It's a bit overwhelming if you're new, but my plan is to keep it simple and just go for a generic tree that makes it easier to find more maps. Really, that's all you need to know. Alright, with that scuffed explanation taken care of, it's time to get to mapping. I stabilized a breach for the very first time, and what's this? A new breach boss. Okay, that's cool. Ah, crap. I come back and carefully whittle him down. This ends the breach and it drops his head as well as a foul hand. Maybe his, maybe somebody else's. We'll never know. I bring these objects to Aelith and that gives me an extra slot to grow another hand in. Great. A few maps later, I get completely overrun in a breach, but when I come back... Let's go, first Divine. Divine Orbs are basically the premium currency used for trading. One of these is worth about 100 Chaos Orbs right now. Time to do some shopping. First things first, a corrupt 6-link body armor with life, double res, and the colors I need, which I pick up for 8 Chaos. I also grab a new helmet to replace the gold arm I've been wearing for the last 20 levels, and arguably most importantly, a new sword with 999 elemental DPS for a measly 15 chaos. That's it. In case this is your first PoE 1 League or maybe even the first Path of Exile 1 video you've ever watched, weapons like this are not normally this cheap. This is all thanks to the Genesis tree giving birth to insane gear for basically no cost at all, as well as the fact that we now have asynchronous trade, which can I just say, told you so. Give us an auction house, a trading post, let us have a little shop set up in our hideouts so trades can still happen while we're in maps or something. Anything would be better than what we currently have, where we spend so much time just whispering people over and over, praying that they'll respond to us so we can just get back to the fun part of the game. They finally did it, and it's phenomenal. Lastly, I grabbed these energy shield boots for 10C with the 37% increased effect of non-damaging ailments, meaning shock, and would you believe it if I told you that I never found a replacement for these for the entire rest of the run? What a freaking steal. I also decided to say goodbye to my elemental weakness and blasphemy setup, replacing it with purity of elements so that I can be ailment immune as well as reach the elemental res cap of 75%. And since I no longer have a curse being applied, I can add in an Assassin's Mark on hit setup for bigger crits. Now, despite all of these upgrades, the 6-link, the new sword, the new boots, and extra hand, I am still dying a lot. My fizz damage mitigation is really bad, and it's something that I don't really have a solution for right now. Well, I guess I'll just keep putting it off for now and hope that I can just out DPS my biggest problem. I enter my first Hive Fortress, a new breach tower defense thing without the towers, and it goes really poorly. Although the area is cool looking and I like these little chests you can open that occasionally drop alternate versions of uniques we've already seen. Good stuff. A dozen maps later, I run into another fortress, but this time I've got backup. That's right, Belle is with us once more, and also my pal Castool, who, allegedly spun the random wheels and got Righteous Fire Chieftain, which is sus as hell and very hard to believe, but I do believe him. He's new to the game, I mean he's only got like 630 hours, that's basically a freaking noob, and he's never played Righteous Fire before, so we'll allow it. Anyways, with everyone contributing, we managed to actually defend Aelith for 24 waves of enemies, and then at the same time, all realized that we have to get the f out of there. After many wrong turns leading to dead ends, we all made it out safely and patiently waited for our loot explosion. That was awesome. Back on my own, I attempted another fortress and didn't even make it to Aelith. I turned the game off, went to cook some dinner, and when I came back, I loaded into the Act 6 town for some reason, and good thing I did, because it turns out I forgot to grab 3 quest rewards that give me extra passive points. Who's the noob now? I put those points into spell suppression and life in a futile attempt to get a little bit tankier. Next, I pick up a new ring, the Taming. This ring gives us a bunch of Ele res and also increases our elemental damage based on the number of elemental ailments our enemies have on them. And since we're an elementalist, we're using all 3. I also anoint my amulet with Divine Judgment, giving us roughly 8% more damage. Speaking of Divine Judgment, see what I did there? Never mind. In the very same map, I complete my first Uberlab trial thanks to Kirak and decide to run it with Bell since he's online and he hasn't done it yet either. It ends up being one of the worst layouts I have ever experienced, and I straight up tell him that if I die during this run, I am waiting until tomorrow to try again, since the lab layouts get reset daily. And yeah, that was really close. Thankfully, we managed to make it to the end and fight Izaro one last time. He lasts exactly 6 seconds longer than I do. I get ascended for the final time and grab the Golem node, Liege of the Primordial, which lets me have up to 3 golems active at the same time, and their buffs are slightly stronger, plus they'll automatically revive whenever they die, which is the real hero of this node. Check out the Golem squad. I do my first Maven invitation and craft an elemental penetration support gem to replace my added lightning, which has unfortunately overstayed its welcome. This is done by combining a replica Bitter Dream with all 3 normal penetration gems at level 20, saving me about 20 chaos in the process. Nice. I get back to mapping, and upon killing this boss here, a Polaric Invitation. This will let me face off with the Black Star, a mini-boss that you have to beat before being able to even attempt the fight with the Syrian Exarch. I pop it in the map device and give it a shot. On most good builds, this fight is a cakewalk, but on a build like ours, we're gonna have to actually do some mechanics. Watch and learn. Holy shit, how am I still alive? Yeah, okay, so this was actually pretty tough, but we did come out on top, without dying, might I add. After that, I find the crafting recipe for Ele plus Chaos Res in this Promenade map over here, and this reminds me that it's probably a good idea to address the fact that my Chaos Res is literally in the negatives. So I do some more shopping and pick out this new helmet with 133 life, 478 accuracy, and 33 chaos res for a very fair 9 chaos orbs. I'm still nowhere near the res cap, but hey, you gotta start somewhere. While I'm at it, I think up a very small way to improve my fizz damage taken, the Pantheon. I grab the Soul of Lunaris, which gives up to 8% fizz damage reduction depending on how many enemies are nearby, and the Soul of Tukohama, which gives me up to 9% fizz damage reduction when I'm standing still, which I'm doing a lot with my relatively slow Lacerate attack speed, okay? Trust. I keep slicing my way through the Atlas, getting the Writhing Invitation next, which lets me face off with the Infinite Hunger, another mini-boss on par with the Black Star from earlier. Once again, I have a really close call when I eat a slam, but by some miracle, I just barely hang in there and cut him down. With both Black Star and the Infinite Hunger defeated, we're now seriously approaching our fights with the Eater of Worlds and the Syrian Exarch, which will give us our first 2 Void Stones if we win. I get to level 87, get bum rushed by a clan of undead Roas, and use the Genesis tree to get some really nice fractured gloves with attack speed and everything else I could want. I have 4 back-to-back deaths while fighting the Burial Chambers version of Valera. This is one of the worst map bosses in the game, but at the same time, she's been here for so long, I'd be sad to see her go. I then find out the hard way that despite being entirely focused on dealing elemental damage, I can still kill myself to Fizz Reflect. Huh, good to know. Few maps later, I come across Egan, starting the questline that leads to the trio of boss fights with the Incarnations, which we'll come back to when we're ready. I start farming Harbingers in my maps by specializing in them on my Atlas tree in hopes that they'll drop some Fracturing Shards, or maybe if I'm really lucky, a Mirror Shard. That would be something. I farm, get to level 89, and buy a final sword upgrade. A 1111 LE DPS sword with crit chance, crit multi, and crafted attack speed for 30 chaos. Dude, these prices are insane. My plan going into this challenge was to go for an Oros into a Rakiatas and then maybe eventually a Void Forge if it wasn't too expensive. But nah, man. When you can grab a sword like this for 30C, why bother? With my damage greatly improved, I get back to the grind, and that's when, wow, div number 3, and this one actually came from a breach. Awesome. Because I'm still dying to big fizz hits and I have never really solved that problem, I think of 2 simple things I should have done a long time ago. I start using Enduring Cry to gain endurance charges, and I start using a low-level cast when damage taken Immortal Call setup. This is a tried and true method that I've been using for years. Why it took me so long to use it in this run? I was being lazy. I reached level 90, putting my points into more crit damage, and that's when I finally make it into tier 16 maps, which is where both the Screaming and Incandescent invitations drop. It's finally time to start checking off the first 2 bosses on our list, starting with the Eater of Worlds. Things got a little sketchy there during that running over the purple balls phase, but ultimately we made it out in one piece. No amazing loot, but we did get our first Void Stone. Awesome. First boss down. Next up, Searing Exarch. And I failed the ball phase. Well, it's not like I was going to survive with 3 golems running around triggering the explosions next to me anyways. I wrap things up fighting an invisible and inanimate version of him and somehow take him out regardless. Also, we get our second Void Stone. Let's go. 2 bosses down, 5 to go. While I did manage to take them both down on the first try, I'm still going to need to get a whole lot stronger before I can take on the rest of the bosses on this list. So I get back to the grind. By running Harbingers with a bunch of Scarabs, my loot piles are looking more and more like this, which is kinda juicy, but not like whoa juicy, if you know what I mean. I level up again, reaching 91, and then buy a 3C amulet with endurance charge on kill, which lets me drop Enduring Cry. I buy an uncorrupted 6-link with life and chaos res, and I throw some Eater and Exarch orbs at it until it gets crit multi and a chance to get Fortify on hit. Fortify reduces the amount of incoming damage we take, so this should make us quite a bit tankier. I also pick up a unique flask while I'm at it, Starlight Chalice. This applies exposure to all elements to enemies around you when you activate it, reducing their resistances and increasing our damage. I got this for 50 chaos, though I see at the time of writing this script, it now goes for 10 divines. Wild. And to boost our DPS even further, I use a dozen Exarch Embers on my boots until they get the drops Brittle Ground for 2 seconds implicit, which makes enemies that stand next to us get crit much more often. Amazing. With these new upgrades, I kill the Breach Boss Vroon in a tier 16 map, and he drops a Hive Brain Gland, an item that lets me fight a pair of new bosses. They're not on my list, but maybe they should be. Let's bring them hell. Good lord, these guys are tanky. This ends up being a very long, drawn-out fight. My damage without my flasks up is atrocious, somewhere in the realm of 1 million DPS if I'm able to just stand there and tank hits, which I'm not. I die a couple times, but eventually, after 10 whole minutes, they both go down and I'm rewarded with a Sundered Will, a new unique ring that hurts my brain when trying to make sense of it. Thankfully, it sells for 25 to 30 chaos, so I'll just pass that headache along to somebody else. Well, at least we can cross them off our growing list of bosses to kill. As far as farming strategies go, I'm getting tired of Harbies, since they take a really long time to do and they're kinda rippy, and worst of all, despite dropping gigantic piles of loot, it's been mostly garbage. So I switched to a basic Searing Exarch altar farm plus loads of Scarab drop chance nodes on the tree. This feels much better. I do my 10-way Maven invitation, unlocking the 5th slot on my map device, get to level 92, and buy a new pair of gloves with more or less the same stats as my previous pair, but also Chaos Res. Nice. At this point, I decide to act upon a problem I've been having for a very long time that I've kinda just been glossing over. Notice how I have over 1000 energy shield when I'm in town? And now compare that to how much I have whenever I'm actually in combat. Yeah, my energy shield is borderline useless because I have no means of recovering it. So let's change that. My solution? The Glorious Vanity Timeless Jewel. Specifically an Ahuana Glorious Vanity. The number doesn't really matter. When I socket it in this socket up here, it transforms the Pain Attunement Keystone into Immortal Ambition instead. This makes it so that whenever my Life Leech can no longer be applied because I'm full health, it'll instead apply to my energy shield, which is perfect, exactly what we want. However, it comes with a few downsides. My ES starts at 0 and cannot recharge normally, and I lose 5% of it per second, so I basically need to keep the leech going on forever. And when I test it out in practice, it actually works. Amazing. We just got a whole lot tankier. I start investing into jewels, buying a pair with double crit multi, and then ID one of the best wand fractures I have ever seen in my life.
Holy shit!
1 to 2 fizz damage. That's insane. I put it up for sale for 15 div just for the memes. Back at the tree, I get a new graft with a level 30 version of that tornado I like so much, and it has 10% chance to get a power charge on kill, which is incredibly helpful. I get a 4th Divine, this time in a Kirak mission where I had to kill Al-Hazmin, and then Kirak offered me an Untainted Paradise, which is a unique map that only he can offer, and it gives you a ton of experience. I got 30% of a level at level 92 from this one map, so good. I purchased a second copy of the Taming, replacing my rare ring so that I can deal even more damage, and then... oh cool, this is a key that opens up a special chest that is guaranteed to have a random shiny unique item in it, and it's worth something like 1.5 divines as is, making it the best drop we've gotten so far. I could trade it for a pretty penny, or I could open it up myself and see what we get. I am a sucker for seeing what's inside, so let's open it. A shiny Quill Rain. A very common unique. Unlucky. At this point, we're now level 93 and feeling stronger than ever, so it's time we start fighting the trio of incarnations to check them off our list. Starting with the incarnation of Neglect. What is it with me and eating slams for breakfast and just barely surviving? It's like I have the perfect amount of life and energy shield to tank boss hits. It's so funny. He goes down, and before we hit up the other two, I've got a few more optimizations to make. 1, I get rid of Herald of Thunder and replace it with the Precision Aura, giving us more consistent crits. 2, I get a new belt from the Genesis tree, and this one has a bunch of Chaos Res, making us finally Chaos Res capped. And 3, I replace the Elemental Penetration gem I've been using up to this point with Trinity. I should have done this a while ago, but I didn't realize Trinity was better until now. Alright, time for the incarnation of Fear. Honestly, this guy was a pushover. And last but not least, the incarnation of Dread. He was considerably harder than the other two, and I did die, but as fate would have it, our Lacerate Elementalist prevailed. Just 2 bosses left for the two-handed thought to go. I was planning on farming the Crescent Splinters for Maven myself, but then I discovered that the Maven's Writ only costs about 50 chaos, and this dropped not that long ago, so I could afford it. Maven, let's do this. I'm usually pretty good at her memory game phase, but this time I just really screwed it up at the start. After a long and arduous battle that took just over 8 minutes, the third Void Stone is acquired and we're down to just one boss left. Before attempting it though, I need to do one last round of preparations. I sell off all of my bubblegum currency and pick up a large two-handed cluster jewel fit for the two-handed thought, as well as a megalomaniac with the Storm Drinker node. This lets me remove my glorious vanity I was using cause now my lightning damage will take care of energy shield leech on its own. This frees up a few passive points, letting us grab, well, these cluster jewels instead, giving us a bunch more damage in the process. I also level up to 94, for no other reason than because I can really, and now I'm feeling as ready as I'll ever be to go head to head with the final boss, Uber Elder. Alexa, play music to kill gods too. With the Uber Elder blown to smithereens and the fourth Void Stone acquired, our melee witch has emerged victorious, and now I can finally play the game. Big thanks to all my channel members and patrons for your ongoing support, and thank you for watching. Subscribe for more random builds, and remember to check out Manta Sleep to support the channel. See you guys in the next one.